We had a moment about 2 months ago when I was first elected as the leader of the Green Party, where I said one of the number one things I wanted to do was grow the party. And I'm absolutely delighted to announce right here, right now, that the Green Party now has a membership of 170,000. That's over 100,000 new members since the day I was elected, which is absolutely extraordinary. And people often ask me, why do I think that is? And I don't need to imagine, because actually people keep stopping me in the street and telling me exactly why it is. It's because hope is feeling normal again. It's because people are recognising that there is a political project that doesn't stand with the multimillionaires and billionaires. It doesn't punch down at migrants, trans people, disabled people, or working class communities. It actually recognises that the 99% in this country have so much more in common. And what do I mean by the 99%? I'm talking about people who are out of work, people who are working, small business owners, local business owners, medium business owners, plumbers, hairdressers, table tennis champions, all of these people having so much more in common. And actually, when we all come together, that's what's powerful, that's solidarity. So as well as the membership, I'm also very excited to be here for another reason, which is the polling we've had recently. Just yesterday, there was a third poll out from Find Out Now that put the Green Party in second place, above the Labour government. Now, of course, polls and members do not equal winning elections, so we're not a moment of complacency here, but it is a really good indication of the direction that the country is going. And something I hear over and over again, especially from people who have come over from the Labour Party, is that they're not leaving the Labour Party. The Labour Party has left them. Keir Starmer, from everything from the two-child benefit cap to the disability cuts to the ongoing genocide in Gaza, has completely let the country down. He came in on a promise of change, and I think most people are noticing there's not been a lot of change. And what has changed has arguably got even worse. So that's the grimness and despair, but that's where the hope comes in. And I'm absolutely delighted, talking about hope, to welcome one of the brand new member of the Green Party. Please give a huge round of applause to Lloyd Russell-Moyle. There's so many things that I'm delighted that Lloyd has joined the Green Party for. And I won't pretend that I know Lloyd particularly well. We've met a few times, but I've known him very well in terms of from the periphery, watching him as an MP for years, serve his community, work really, really hard, and make sure that he was working for people and planet and not the vested interests I was just talking about. I think the work I particularly want to highlight is Lloyd's focus on inequality. We know that inequality lies at the heart of so many of our problems. For decades now, poor people have got poorer and rich people have got richer, and Lloyd has been exposing that. His work, I was going to say more recently, it's been for a long time, but particularly recently on Palestine, to stand absolutely for justice for the Palestinians, and been a brave and authentic voice that's spoken out on that. And also for the trans community. Last night I was at a vigil in Trafalgar Square in London for Trans Remembrance Day. I spoke to person after person who was trans, who spoke about how much it meant to them to have a party that is speaking out to say that trans rights are human rights, trans men are men, trans women are women, and non-binary identities also exist. And Lloyd has long been a voice who has been speaking in allyship, as well as being the LGBT community ourselves, but also working to listen to trans people and to empower their voices. So one more time, a huge welcome to Lloyd.
Well, it already feels like it's been a long time. It's been a busy 24 hours since the news broke. But it's also felt like a real positive time already. Seeing Green Party members, talking to them, hearing about the things that we share in common, the desires that we share in common, which is to have a fairer world, to have a safer world, and to have a world that isn't in the grips of a climate catastrophe and a climate crisis. These are things that I have worked for many years. I came into politics first when I was 16, and I attended, on behalf of UK youth, the World Summit on Sustainable Development, and represented young people's view that we needed to take immediate action on the environment. And we see absolute failure of global leadership on that level, and we need to redouble it. But I've always also believed that we need to tackle the issues that matter day to day with people. You cannot get people on board with saving the environment if we don't get people on board with ensuring that they can live well and prosper. And at the moment, too many people feel like the future for their children is worse than the future that they have had. And that is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe that breeds fear and hate as people scrap for the very few resources that they think they can get, and the very rich point in the other direction and try and scapegoat more and more minorities. We saw that only this week, didn't we, with the Labour government's awful plan to steal people's jewellery on the border as they arrive, to punish them for coming in the wrong way. This is sickening stuff. But there is an alternative. And that's why I am coming over to the Green Party. That's why I've joined the Green Party, because there is an alternative of hope. There is an alternative that we can build a country that doesn't rely on huge multinationals and billionaires squirreling away money and denying people in this country the future that they could have. There is a hope that our communities could have centres like this up and down our country. And why aren't there centres like this? Because in far too many building estates built by big developers, there are no community facilities built, because it's all about the money and the bottom line and not about the community. And I think about the work that I tried to do in Parliament around banning conversion therapy. I wrote a bill that could have gone through. We missed the vote by 20 votes, and half of the Labour MPs didn't bother turning up. I was promised that it would be brought in this time round. Conversion therapy, for those that don't know, of course, is that abusive practice where LGBT people are taken and forced very often to convert back to straight lifestyles. It's abusive and it causes people real trauma, and this government still hasn't banned it, despite having a bill that we wrote together, and they said they would bring it forward. And if you look at issue after issue, the work was done, but they have abandoned all of those progressive things, and the Green Party is the party that's talking about them now. And I think that we saw and we see up and down the country that the Greens are the only real alternative to reform. Zach, you are one of the few people that actually is able to call reform fascist, able to call the danger out. And poll after poll, as you say, show that the Green Party are the only ones that are able to challenge that now. So if people care about the future of this country, I think they need to come and join the Green Party. If people care about the future of their communities, they need to come and join the Green Party. But if people just also want, and have come from the Labour Party, they want a party that's not going to be full of abuse and vindictiveness. That we see the Labour Party treated their members like that, and now they treat the country like that. People who stand up against a genocide get arrested as terrorists. People who are disabled get their benefits stripped away. People who are older are left to freeze. That's the kind of nastiness that they have imported, and that's something that we can change. We can change together. And I'm very excited to come and change that with you. So thank you very much for such a fantastic welcome. And I'm hoping that we will see Green MPs, Green councillors, and importantly here in Sussex, a Green mayor in the very near future.
Jerome, I think.
Yes, hello. Do we have any questions for Zach or Lloyd? Daisy?
Hello, nice to see you. Nice to meet you. You're experiencing a big growth, as you spoke about, in success at the moment in the polls and in membership figures on 170,000. One of the only other opposition parties left on the left wing is your party, which were reported this week to be concerned about the inroads that you're making with the left wing voters. What would you say to your party members? Would you call on them to leave your party and back the Greens?
Well, the first thing I'd say is I guess I welcome conversations with anyone who shares the values of the Green Party, those values being to recognise the inequality at the heart of our society, to want things like a wealth tax on the super rich, multimillionaires and billionaires, and also people who are concerned about tackling the climate crisis. And I believe that lots of the people who are involved with the Your Party project probably, in fact, do share those values. It's not my job to tell people what to do or what projects to start up or not start up. It is my job as the leader of the Green Party to present the case for the Green Party and the fact that if reform are rocketing through the polls with a politics of hate and division, we have now demonstrated that a party can also rocket through the polls with a politics of hope and community. So my relentless focus between now and next May's local elections and then the general election will be on growing the membership of the Green Party, seeing those poll ratings keep hopefully rising up, and most importantly, to keep seeing us win by-elections like we did in Macclesfield last night, making sure that seat by seat, we're taking on this unpopular Labour government and we're taking the fight to reform, and that's where my focus is.
Any further questions? Anybody would like to ask a question? Go, Geoffrey.
Lloyd, last time I interviewed you, you got wrapped over the knuckles because we talked about purging in the Labour Party. The Green Party, as I understand it, is not whipped. Do you think this is a weakness? And you can feel free to talk.
Look, I think one of the things that appeals me to the Green Party is it is a broad church party. It's not just a party that's going to take one very sect or particular view or spend time hopefully arguing about one sect or view, which we see sometimes with other left-wing parties. But what it is a party that's welcome to have a debate and then set democratically policy at its conference. And I would expect, and I have always tried in my life, to represent the members that have elected you, the members that you have stood on the ticket of. And I would expect, and I would hope, all Green elected representatives, and if the Green Party members choose me to be a Green Party elected representative, I would expect to abide by what Green Party members have said. But there's always conflicts, aren't there? Sometimes you can have a set of Green Party members locally saying one thing and a set of national policies saying another thing. And elected representatives have to play that balance. They have to think about what the local area and the local members are saying, as well as the national party policy. So that flexibility, I think, is key for honest politics. It's key for being true to who you are and true to your local communities. So I welcome that. If Green Party members want to, and I'm part of that, if we want to have a stronger whipping system, I'm happy to have that debate, but I will follow probably what others who are more experienced about that, and I will support whatever they want.
And just a follow-up, if you aren't selected to go to where probably you ought to go, which is Kemptown and Peacehaven, would you support the candidate that is selected?
Oh, well, look, I think it's almost slightly premature to be having discussions on who's going to be selected. The selection process in the Green Party hasn't even opened for Kemptown or any of the seats yet. I will throw my hat in the ring. I will throw my hat in the ring for other levels of election possibly as well. And I hope that the Green Party members might select me. But they might not. And then I really look forward to rallying around whoever is selected to make sure that we have good Green voices in Parliament, in Council, and as the elected Mayor.
Amazing. Further questions? Yes, gentleman down here.
My name is Paddy O'Keefe. I'm a member of your party. I've been arrested for my support for Palestine Action, and I believe that Israel's genocide is going to be the defining issue of our time, which will be the defining issue of the next general election. And I would want to know, because I know it's already causing some frictions within your party as to how specific people will be in their with regard to anti-Zionism and support and fighting against Zionism. I would like to hear both of your reactions to that, please.
Yeah, so first of all, while recognising that what's happening in Israel is a genocide and is one of the defining issues of our time, I think it's also important to recognise that I think a lot of the electorate are very concerned about the food on the table and the heat in their homes. Now, that's not to pit those two things against each other, but I think it's always important for a party, in fact, exactly as Lloyd was just saying, to have a broad coalition of people that have general aims on where they go. I've spoken very publicly many times that I grew up in a Jewish household. I grew up going to a Jewish school and grew up with Zionism being very much a part of my identity and the community that I grew up in. In 2019, 2020, when I first got elected to the London Assembly, I met a group of ex-IDF soldiers from Breaking the Silence who were talking about the occupation. This was before the attack on October 7th and the ongoing genocide. And then they were saying, because obviously this didn't start on October 7th, they were talking about the decades of oppression that had happened in the region. And I think it's very clear that Zionism has been completely incompatible in terms of the way that this Israeli government has carried out itself and needs to be condemned. I think it's not just the Israeli government, by the way. I think it was maybe Yanis Varoufakis who said that he also blames Britain and various other countries for the role that they've played in this. I don't think that's just historical. I think the fact that we're still selling arms, we're sharing intelligence, is absolutely disgraceful. That all being said, I know I've been criticised for saying that we should maintain a relationship with Israel, and I want to just define that quickly, so I'm glad you've asked me the question. I want to keep a relationship with every single country, including people that whose politics, or in fact whose actions, I also roundly condemn, President Putin being an example. I think once you've stopped having a negotiation or any diplomatic relationship with another country, then I'm not sure what that alternative is other than military action, and I don't think anyone's particularly suggesting that here. So I think there's sometimes semantic games that go on about having diplomatic relationships with countries. The diplomatic relationship does not involve sharing arms. It doesn't even involve trading necessarily, and I support boycott, divestment and sanctions. But I do think having relationships with countries is important, because I think once the moment you've abandoned that, then we're into a whole different dystopian future. And I think it's incumbent on anyone, no matter how much they disagree with a world leader or a president or a prime minister, to maintain a relationship rather than running straight to military action.
Thank you. That was very specific. Thank you. Lloyd.
Well, in 2007, I hosted a tour of Israeli refuseniks, people who refused to take part in the IDF. This is not a new issue. People who try and make this out to be something that only happened in October a few years ago, I think miss the point that many Israelis themselves have known for a long time what is happening in Palestine is not only intolerable, it is inexcusable. And my view is still that. I'm pleased that the Green Party has said that the IDF should be considered a terrorist organisation. I think it is exactly the right kind of line that we should be taking. And clearly anyone who is active in those actions of the IDF most recently, or in command, must face justice in international courts when this is over. There will be a reckoning. And I think it's very clear that an ethnocentric, militarised state cannot continue to exist in the current way it is. And what we need is democratic state for all people in that region, in a form that the people want in that area. It's not for us to say whether it should be one state, two states, whatever states, but the people in that area must democratically decide how that is. And I think that are the important principles. We call out the genocide, we call out the ongoing occupation that's lasted for almost 75 years. We say there is no excusing it anymore, and we say going forward there must be a reckoning in all those people that supported that kind of thing. And I'm willing and I'm determined to, in all my activities, to continue to say that. And you will know that I have been criticised many times for saying that probably prematurely, and had many gotchas from different papers where I have criticised or I have said that many Jewish people in this country are very critical of Zionism, and it should not be treated as a fait accompli. And I think that's where the public's eyes have opened up to that now, and they can see that.
Thank you.
Amazing. We'll take one more question and move to photos. Any more question? Yes, gentleman at the back.
Hi, Zach and Lloyd. Good to meet you guys. Personally, met you earlier and show my appreciation. I've got a question on behalf of somebody else, so I'll just read it out. What can we do to prevent the introduction of digital ID systems, especially since immigration seems to have been used as a justification for it?
Should I jump in first?
You go.
I think, first of all, the question's really well put. Let's talk more widely about the increasing authoritarianism of this Labour government. We just had a question about the crackdown on Palestine Action. To be clear, this is people who have held cardboard signs protesting a genocide, and the idea that the government would be more concerned about people, often pensioners but not always, holding cardboard signs more than the genocide that is going on seems to me not just incoherent but actually morally repugnant. And so we've seen this move towards this dystopian policing of people and their right to protest and their right to speak. And not only is this worrying right now, but it's also worrying, as we see in the polls, an increasingly possibility of a reform government and Nigel Farage or whatever it might be. And so we always need to think when we create laws about both the action now but also the consequences in the future of giving increased powers to governments. And actually I focused on Nigel Farage, but let's say we have a left-wing government in the future. I also don't think we should necessarily be handing more powers to any government. I think actually something very deeply and true about being British is our ability to speak and our democracy and our ability to dissent. And so it's interesting that you referenced migration there too, because I think there's something very deeply un-British about the attitude that Nigel Farage and now Keir Starmer is pushing. The quoting of Enoch Powell of this, the echoing of Enoch Powell. Lloyd spoke very articulately about Shabana Mahmood's moves towards demonising and marginalising some of the most vulnerable yet resilient people in the world. And again, it feels deeply unpatriotic to me. We should be a country. Patriotism is being proud of who we are, where we are, and our compassion and our ability to have compassion. In terms of a digital ID itself, I think there's a question here about what problem are they trying to fix here? Because I know some people have ideological oppositions to this, and I understand that, but I'm not even coming necessarily from an ideological opposition here. If we're going to spend this much money and this much time on something, I want to know what problem is it trying to solve, and could we do that differently? It strikes me that the government have never really come up with a coherent answer to that question. And so I think there are so many questions alongside all of these concerns that I just put, that it seems like of all the problems that we're facing right now, we've got homeless people in the streets, we've got a housing crisis, the inequality crisis we keep talking about, and the climate crisis. The idea to focus on digital ID, and by the way, I would put the Online Safety Act as well in this box, where I'm not quite sure what exactly, well, I know what that's trying to solve, but I'm not convinced the way about it is going to achieve the desired results. So there's so many things with this government, it seems a bit botched and a bit of a distraction from actually just taxing the rich and doing the actual things that need to be done.
I think you're quite right. I mean, you've said it. I think the other thing that really concerns me about digital ID is the look at also at the same time how trans people have been marginalised. And suddenly, if you have to prove who you are and the gender that the government has stamped on you at every interaction, it actually becomes more scary and a more dangerous world for people who don't conform in the way the government says that you have to or you should, or society says that you have to or you should. And to me, that is a less welcoming and a more scary place to live. And this idea that we treat people not as how they present and come to us and how they are and interact with them as humans, but we're checking their documents to make sure that they're allowed in or they're allowed this service is not, to me, something that is positive. And if you look at other European countries that have physical IDs, and some of them have digital IDs, the large European countries have much higher migration and asylum rates than we do. So this idea that it will suddenly stop a pull factor has no evidence that I can see based on it. And what does that lead to? You go to a food bank and someone says, show me your digital ID, otherwise I'll let you starve because you're no recourse to public funds, or you are recourse to public funds. That's not how I want anyone to be treated in this country. That's not the kind of dignity that I think that we have always come to respect. And when we did have IDs in this country, it took people to take the government to court to get rid of them on the basis that it was un-British. And I think that that very basis is what we should remember of why they were got rid of and why they shouldn't return in a compulsory kind of nature.
I just want to jump in with a very final bit too, because actually Lloyd sparked it off in my mind, is we've talked quite a bit, or I have in this conversation, about reform, and we should absolutely condemn reform politicians. I think it's also important though that we keep speaking to people who might be curious about voting for reform. And actually what we're hearing over and over again, and in fact there was polling out for this yesterday, is people who are thinking about voting reform also want a tax on the super rich, on multimillionaires and billionaires. And so what I'd say to those voters is you're being distracted. They're trying to distract you with small boats, with migration, whereas actually the problems facing this country are the housing crisis. We don't have enough council homes, so let's build them. With an NHS crisis, so let's invest in the National Health Service, and also with the inequality crisis, which we've talked about lots. We can deal with all of these things whilst also giving dignity and humanity towards migrants. And I think it's important that we keep saying that, because I think that's how we're going to make hope normal again. Thank you very much.